Okay, hi everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel. I'm Emilie from Groupe Trois, and today my team and I have something special for you. As MBA students from IPMI International Business School, we are today going to help you understand the key ideas and lessons learned from the revised version of 2006 Globalization and its Discontents from Joseph Stiglitz. So we are diving into this book that has truly left a big impression for us. So if you're in, let's go into it.
So, in the world of economics, there are visionaries whose ideas shape of our understanding, often intricate dance between knowledge and institutions. One such luminary is Professor Stiglitz from Columbia University. In the year 2001, he was awarded the prestigious Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics. This book is significant because it challenges these pillars of the free market with the information gleaned from the author's personal experience working in Washington and the World Bank.
Okay, so let's dig deeper into the book. Firstly, Stiglitz outlines some of the key shortcomings and issues associated with globalization, which has been in turmoil since the two world wars, the Great Depression, and of course the numerous economic crises. Unlike most economists who see globalization as a good turn only, for him, globalization has become controversial not only in developing countries but also in developed countries. So the unhappiness with globalization on display comes from the way institutions have been managing in the late 20th century. Also, Stiglitz merely concentrated on Donald Trump as an important variable to analyze the rising and new protectionism that changes the current landscape of globalization discourse. So he observed that most of discounts with globalization is focusing on trade agreements which highly favor the multinational corporation. So, in the second chapter, Stiglitz highlights that globalization is a multi-phased phenomenon that extends beyond just economic factors. The political aspect of globalization reshapes the dynamic of power, with international organizations gaining influence. In 1997, Stiglitz started his job as a chief economist and senior vice president of the World Bank, which allowed him to have a stronger overview of the institutions inside and particularly IMF. In his opinion, IMF has failed in its missions to maintain global stability as the IMF establishes major obstacles for developing countries to diminish poverty problems. It's the example of Egypt. That's why Stiglitz highlights that globalization is a multi-phased and complex process that encompasses various dimensions, including economic, social, political, and of course cultural aspects. It is not merely about the flow of goods and capital, but also about the spread of ideas and values.
Chapter 3. First, trade liberalization plus high interest rate equal to job destruction and employment creation. Second, financial market liberalization without regulatory structure equal to economic instability. Third, privatization without competition policies and oversight to ensure that the monopoly are not abused equal to higher price for consumers. Last, fiscal austerity is pursued blindly equal to higher unemployment rate and shredding of social contract. In short, freedom to choose is when countries can consider the alternatives with strategy that priorities should they adopt through democratic political processes with their own passive and expansive. International institutions should only play a role of international provider so that those countries can make a judgment on their own knowing the consequences. Chapter 4. An alternative to IMF mistakes proposed by Stiglitz is to implement the policy and operate the market as if it was actually employment whilst conducting a financial restructuring and a debt restructuring and allowing the financial flow like Korean government did. In sum, what happened in East Asia helps to present the discontent in developing countries towards international institutions and developed countries. Additionally, IMF should reconsider its strategy and plan to provide aid to developing countries.
Chapter 5 and concludes that neither the taxpayers in the West, to whom the IMF and IBRD were supposed to be accountable, not the Russian people, who paid the ultimate price, knew much about what was going on at the time of transition to the market. And only now, we are wrestling with the question, who lost Russia? And why? According to him, the answers are arising, and as we see, then they are not edifying. And then, in the chapter 6, dealing with unfair trade laws and other mischiefs starts with the accusation of the IMF being a political institution. He says that the IMF positions were intrinsically linked to the political judgment of the Clinton administration unfair deals, and treats with the Russian Boris Yeltsin and accuses that the IMF of being a party to these unfair deals and treaties.
In this chapter, the author explores China's economic transformation, highlighting gradualism, local adaptability, and unmotivated populism as key drivers. Meticulous reforms led to increased employment and reduced poverty, propelling China into a global investment leader. In Marcos' economic lens, the author uncovers the balance between government involvement and privatization. Swiss privatization, while enticing, occasionally led to monopolies and job losses. Finding equilibrium between market dynamics and governance is crucial for Morocco's economic future. The analysis of the IMF's influence on trickle-down economics reveals its potential for bias and inequality, especially impacting farmers in developing nations. Additionally, capital market liberalization, while beneficial, can sometimes hinder local entrepreneurship. And then Chapter X criticized the IMF's Washington consensus policies in its Asian crisis, exposing unintended consequences. The chapter reveals flaws in the Washington consensus during recessions, anti-inflationary measures, and limited government interference can hinder expansion as seen in Thailand, exacerbating the debt crisis in East Asia. In this chapter, the author examines Russia's transition from communism to capitalism, highlighting the consequences of past economic changes. The shift led to inflation, deflation of savings, and poverty. The East Asia crisis triggered a global devolution, leading to debt default.
In this chapter, Stiglitz provides a critical analysis of the IMF involvement in Russia's economic transition during the 1990s. He highlights how the IMF policies appear to be driven by political consideration rather than sound economic principles, including supporting Boris Yeltsin and controversial privatization scheme. Stiglitz also underscores the contrast between policy debates in Moscow, where there was healthy discussion, and Washington, where the IMF and US Treasury suppressed debate and criticism. He argued that the US should have promoted democracy in Russia rather than aligning with specific leaders, and should have provided more comprehensive support to emerging leaders committed to transparency and genuine democracy, particularly the downside of rapid privatization and the hubris of Western leaders who believe their reform programs would bring change. Stiglitz advocates for a shift towards supporting democratic institutions and highlights China's successful approach to reforms. Chapter 12 delves into the flaws in the IMF globalization approach, criticizing its privatization of financial interests over the global economy and issues with exchange rates and moral hazard. The chapter underscores the negative impacts of the Asian financial crisis on workers and taxpayers and calls for the alternative strategies, greater accountability, and focus on poverty reduction and growth to guide future reforms.